The Other Hand, also known as Little Bee, is a 2008 novel by British author Chris Cleave. It is a dual narrative story about a Nigerian asylum seeker and a British magazine editor who meet during the oil conflict in the Niger Delta and are reunited in England several years later. Cleave, inspired as a university student by his temporary employment in an asylum detention center, wrote the book in an attempt to humanize the plight of asylum seekers in Britain. The novel examines the treatment of refugees by the asylum system as well as issues of British colonialism, globalization, political violence, and personal accountability. Here we are going to present the characters in Little Bee. The first character, Little Bee. 16 years old, Little Bee is a deeply ironic character. In her, the extremes of hope and horror live side by side. With every breath, she embraces life while also waiting for death to find her, as it found her family and most of the people in her village. Most readers find her very sympathetic and lovable, yet, except for kind folks like Sarah and Charlie, this great girl is unwanted in England just because she is an immigrant. Even worse, she is wanted dead in her own country, Nigeria, because she witnessed the atrocity committed by the oil companies who are turning her former village into an oil field. At one point in the novel, Little Bee tries to help Charlie, aka Batman, 4-year-old son of Sarah, deal with grief over his father Andrew's death. She tells him, Little Bee is only my superhero name. I have a real name too, like you, Charlie. Like we have, Charlie. Maybe it's indeed helpful to think of Little Bee in superhero terms. She has a deep sense of justice, a justice that does include vengeance, and she survives on skill and daring. She excels at flight, at hiding, and at disguise. That sure sounds like a superhero to us, but as she is, we never lose sight of Little Bee's extreme vulnerability. Although she is strong, intelligent, and resourceful, she is also very young and she doesn't have any money or legal status in England. She is totally dependent on her own wits and on the kindness of strangers in Sarah. She finds that kind stranger and gives back at least as much kindness as she gets. Little Bee, all things considered, is a kind, loving person whose personal tragedies have made her more actually aware of the suffering of others. Yes, even the suffering of someone like Lawrence, whose troubles seem downright banal next to Little Bee's. Her ability to help others when her own life is hanging in the balance is part of what makes her a truly extraordinary person. Little Bee's given name is Udo, which means peace. We think it fits. What about you? The second character, Sarah O'Rourke. Sarah, narrator of 5 of Little Bee's 11 chapters, is 32 years old when the novel opens in May 2007. She is married unhappily to Andrew O'Rourke and they have a 4-year-old son, Charlie. Sarah O'Rourke is her legal name. She runs a trendy fashion magazine, Nixie, but aspires to more serious journalism. She uses her maiden name, Summers, as her professional name. Sarah is a bundle of contradiction, telling us in one moment what a cautious woman she is, and in the next how she chopped off her finger on a Nigerian beach to save a stranger. Little Bee, Sarah's an ambiguous character open to a bunch of interpretation. She takes risks and crosses social, legal, moral, and geographical boundaries and has a knack of making readers uncomfortable. Between 2005, when she starts her affair with Lawrence Osborne, and meets Little B in 2007 when the novel ends, Sarah experiences massive change. In 2005, Sarah's a fairly naive and sheltered working mother who is beginning to question her life and her world. When the novel ends in 2007, she has lost the middle finger of her left hand, her husband, and any semblance of life as she knew it before she met Little B. Instead of running a fashion magazine and a nice suburban household, she is risking her life and possibly her son's in order to gather stories for a book about the abuses suffered by Nigerian people at the hands of oil companies. Third character, Charlie O'Rourke. Charlie is a 4-year-old son, and he is reason enough to read this story. Before we dive into what we think of him, here are some good reference points from our beloved bookseller. Charlie's tale is about how he deals with the loss of his father. How does one exactly explain to a 4-year-old that his father has hanged himself in the study? No way are we taking on that task. If we can't help it, Sarah too is definitely saving that conversation for a later date. But Charlie puts quite a bit together using his bad senses. And yes, Charlie is Batman for the summer of 2007. This is more than a catchy gimmick. Charlie's reasons for becoming Batman are revealed slowly through Little B's and Sarah's narratives. Charlie seems to become Batman around the time Andrew's depression is coming to a climax. He views his father's mental illness as a version of fighting buddies. When Charlie tells Little B, if I is not Batman all the time, then my daddy dies, and I was at my nursery when the buddies got my daddy, we can piece things together. Charlie became Batman to help Andrew fight the buddies, but because he was at nursery school and not wearing his Batman costume to boot, Andrew died. Charlie seems to know and not know that Andrew is dead. His comments show that he thinks that if he is Batman all the time, which means wearing the suit to nursery school now, Andrew might somehow come back to life, or it will be revealed that he's been alive the whole time, just kidnapped or something. The most important part of Charlie's experience happens on the last pages, as we discuss in What's Up with the ending. When Little B reveals to him that her real name is Udo, which means peace, Charlie is finally able to take off his Batman costume and romp in the surf with the other kids, finally wearing nothing but his own natural skin. In this moment, Charlie begins to let go of his guilt about his father's death and embrace childhood without feeling like the fate of the world hangs in his hands. Character Andrew O'Rourke. Andrew is a deeply tragic figure. He is Sarah's husband, Charlie's father, and a political columnist for the Times. We get the idea he isn't exactly happy even before he learns about Sarah and Lawrence's affairs, or before he finds himself unable to cut off his middle finger to save Little B and her sister. Apparently, Sarah's finger was only worth one girl. All this makes it seem like Andrew was already ripe for the depression he spiraled into after the incident with Little B in Nigeria. As Sarah learns late in the novel, Andrew was at least trying to deal with the guilt over Little B and her sister. He believed both to be dead by immersing himself in researching atrocities committed by oil companies and detention centers like the one Little B is held in for 2 years. If his reaction to Little B's appearance at his home is any indication, this research was totally overwhelming him with the world's sorrow. He is haunted by his experience in Nigeria and takes Little B to be an hallucination or a ghost. Heck, maybe he's already been hallucinating her. Hallucination seems much more natural to him than the flesh and blood reality that's actually there. Just like Sarah didn't know about her husband's book until after his death, Andrew is a complex figure who remains pretty inaccessible to the readers. We know he's adored by Charlie, and ironically, Sarah comes to love him again after he's hanged himself, after she realizes how much she relied on him, and after she learns about that Richard. This is not to say that Sarah would have or could have helped him more if she realized all this earlier. He seems to have been living in his own private hell, unreachable not just to us readers, but even to his wife and son. Character Lawrence Osborne. To cut to the chase, Lawrence is Sarah's lover. He also happens to work for the Home Office, the department of the British government that handles immigration. He is married to Linda and has 3 kids. He is known for his self-deprecation, constantly calling himself a loser, which Sarah finds alternately annoying and und- endearing. Otherwise, Lawrence isn't very sympathetic. He calls little B a BH and threatens her and might have consciously manipulated little B into exposing herself to the authority when Charlie, who was just hiding, was thought to be missing by the River Thames. In the end, he does play the good guy, sort of, and use his position at the Home Office to find out which plane Little B is being deported on. Giving Sarah his knowledge is a big sacrifice on his part. He knows that it means that Sarah will be with Little B in Nigeria, not in England with him. At the same time, his act is what makes any future relationship with Sarah possible, and in spite of his faults, he does seem to love her. Lawrence might also seem unsympathetic because he is a lot like many of us. We don't let strangers into our homes. We don't seriously consider upsetting our comforts by sponsoring refugees without documentation. We probably wouldn't be brave enough to cut off a finger for a stranger. Lawrence, like most people, isn't willing to start making sacrifices that could disrupt his life, even if he'll admit it's a bit unsatisfying. Andrew, Lawrence is able to deal with the reality of inequality in the world, just fine. He doesn't lose any sleep over it, but he can't be with Sarah and hang on to that apathy at the same time making sure Little B is safe and sound and helping make public the situations faced by others like Little B becomes Sarah's life work. In spite of their rather tawdry beginnings, Lawrence seems to be turning around a nobler person as a result of knowing Sarah. Fifth character, Nkurunka. Nkurunka, whose name means future is bright, is Little B's older sister, who takes on the name Kindness like Little B's. Nkurunka flees her village when it's destroyed by oil company workers, but she and Little B are hunted down when Andrew refuses to give the hunters his middle finger. Little B is made to wade underneath an old boat while Nkurunka is brutally raped, tortured, and murdered. Character Yvette. Yvette is a Jamaican woman who is being held with Little B in Black Hill Immigration Removal Center. We don't learn Yvette's story, but we know that the parts of her body that are visible are covered in scars, suggesting she's been through hell. Yvette has sex with a Black Hill Immigration Removal Center employee in exchange for him putting a mark next to her name in the computer, showing her as set for release. In order to keep Yvette's release from looking suspicious, the employee selects 3 other girls at random to be released as well. One of those girls, of course, is Little B. Yvette is a fun, straightforward character, but she disappears from the novel after the 3rd chapter when Little B sets off on her own of Andrew and Sarah's house. Yvette is something of a device to explain Little B's release from detention, but she also presents another perspective on the immigration experience, definitely read the book so you can meet Yvette. She's a cool character we'd like to see more. The Sorry Girl, whose real name we never learn, is one of the girls released from the detention center along with Little B, Yvette, and the girl with no name. We never learn Sorry Girl's story because she drops out of the novel when Little B sets off alone for undergoing Sarah's house. Not long after getting out of the detention center, we do know she has thick scar tissue across her neck, as if someone, maybe even herself, very nearly succeeded in slitting her throat. Girl with no name is released from the detention center with Little B, Yvette, and Sorry Girl. For her, the release is an utter tragedy. We don't know what horrors she's running from, but Little B tells us that her story has actually been verified, meaning the girl probably qualifies for asylum. When she's released from the detention center abruptly, without documents and without a caseworker, the trauma she's suffering as a result of her experiences overwhelms her. We suspect that this is what leads to her suicide in Mr. Ayer's shelter. Abira is a girl with no named daughter who we come to understand is dead in Mr. Ayer's shelter. The girl with no name begins hallucinating that her daughter is there with her. In a touchingly disturbing scene, Little B and Yvette play along, acting as if the little girl is alive and real. Girls back home. Little B often imagines how she would explain the things she experiences in England to her girl pals back home from the Nigerian village where she lived before coming to England. Chris Cliff says, the girls back home are the novel's Greek chorus. They are a foil in whose imagined reaction the cultural dissonance experienced by Little B can be made explicit. It's a good device because it feels more natural than having Little B go around talking straight to camera and saying, "Whoa, I'm freaked out by this and this and this."